Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about two ways of creating paths in Adobe Illustrator. One being freeform and the other being more mathematical and precise. So here we have our scene here. And to make sure we're all looking at the same thing, we can do Workspace, Essentials, and then Workspace, Reset Essentials. I have a artboard here. Okay, so then over here are all our tools, and we'll kind of go through these as I tackle new content. First tool I want to look at is under here. So under this little paintbrush, there's these other brushes. The first one is the pencil brush. And what the pencil brush does is as you move, it records your strokes and then encodes these as connected points, as a Bezier path. And you can, if we double click on this, we can either have it be very accurate, and then there'll be more points, or we can have it be smoother and have it be kind of smoothed out as it goes. So where would you use this? Well, this is what's actually recording your gesture, the gesture of your hand in making strokes. And that might be what you want to do. But there's another more kind of mathematical approach to creating form, and that is with the pen tool. So where in the pencil tool, you make your gesture, and then the computer sets down these anchor points. In the pen tool, you control where these anchor points are created. And there's a lot of advantages to this. So let me just start fresh. So in learning the pen tool, there's really two shapes you need to learn how to make. One is a heart and the other is a wave. If you can make those two shapes, you can make just about anything. So let me start with the heart. So when I click with the pen tool active, it will put down a point. And if I click and drag, these little handles come out. These are called Bezier handles, but basically one way to think about them is how much influence this point has over the resulting line. So if I make these handles shorter, which we'll do in a second, you'll see that they won't have much influence on the line. And then if I make them longer, they have more influence on the line. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put down some points willy-nilly and do that. Okay. All right, so what do we got? We got this weird shape here. If you notice, when I roll over my shape, there's this little pink text that pops up. That is because of our smart guides, which are really handy most of the time when creating stuff. You'll also notice, I'll explain what I'm doing in a second, when I get this point lines up with this other point up there, there's this pink line that comes out. That's also from the smart. Okay, so now that we have this path, one of the beauty of working in a program like Illustrator is that this is a mathematical plot where we have positions in space, and then we have connections between those positions, and then influences over the resulting line. And what's awesome about this is because it's mathematical, it's light and it is changeable. It is, we can manipulate it. So to manipulate, we'll go to our next two tools. We have this thing on the top. This is called the select tool, I believe the proper name is selection. Well, here's this kind of thing too. Like, I don't know exactly what it's called. So if I roll over it and I wait a second, it's the selection tool. And there's also a hotkey there. What the selection tool does is select your whole shape, okay? Underneath it is this, the direct select tool, and the hotkey for that is A. With that tool, you can select segments of your line or individual points or individual handles. You can also select multiple points at once. Okay, so the way to approach this, all else being equal, is you want to put your verts or your control points, they have a bunch of different names, at the changes of direction. So I'm going to make half a heart here, right? So there's a change of direction here. This is where the two halves are going to meet. There's a change of direction where it goes from up to down. Then there's a change of direction right here where it goes from right to left. So that means that this vert is at the wrong spot. I want to put this at the apex of the curve. Now, when I did that moved the kind of apex over to here. And so what I want to do is now take these handles and start aligning them along these 0 and 90 degree orientations. And what you'll see here is that this part of the shape is making a triangle. Now, the beauty of this is because I have this triangle, I have so much control over this thing. I can control how high it goes up. I control where the apex of that point is if I want to weight it one way or another. Same to the side, I can control the width and the apex. But the best part is that with these handles like this, I have total control over the tension of this curve. So if I want this to be a little bit more like a soft square, this lets me do it with total control, okay? And if we look at, I'll go on a little tangent here. If I make a letter form, let's say, like an O, okay, and then I'm going to outline this letter form by going Command-Shift-O. You'll notice some of the things we're talking about. So there are verts at the changes in direction. And then, so there's only 4. And then we have these handles, and these handles are making triangles. And so that is when it's very efficient mathematically, but when the type designer is making this letter form, you have total control over every aspect of this thing with the least amount of points possible. So that is the way to tackle this stuff. So, I want to bring this down here. Now there's moments like where the two halves meet where we can't have these 90 degree curves and we're more, we have to work at angles, but the verts are still at this change in direction. Okay, so I have half my heart, and if I want to make the other half, I can Alt drag to duplicate it. I can go and flip it over here with the transform effect. I can move it back together again. And that's great. But if I want to make a change and have it maintain its symmetricalness, I got to keep doing that. And that's really tedious. Okay. So that is where we'll do the next thing. So in Illustrator, there's many ways to automate stuff, and I'll go in a little deeper later. But if we go to Effects, Distort and Transform, it brings up the transform effect. And this is a way of manipulating your underlying shape, but it's actually much more useful as a way to duplicate things. Okay. Okay, so then this little shape down here corresponds to this bounding box on this object. And so what I want to do is make one copy and flip it on the X. And you'll see now the two parts of the heart are right on top of each other. And that is because the reflection is happening in the center of this bounding box. If I wanted to go to one side, I click over here. All right. And so now, when I make one change, it updates both sides, which is really a time saver and it makes your work more precise. Okay, so there's our heart. Like I said, there's two shapes that we need to be able to make. So let's shrink this one down. Maybe we'll flip the stroke and the fill just by clicking on that button. So there's our heart. All right, so then the next shape we're going to make is a wave. So to do that, just like before, I'm going to place a point. I'm going to place another one at a change in direction. I could place one here, change of direction, and another one there. So if you want to, so right now what's happening is when you have a fill on an object, it's turning it into a shape. And the difference between a shape and a line is a shape closes. Okay, a line is open. So the software is drawing this line connecting the two because we have a fill. And if there's a fill, it assumes you want a shape. So what I'm going to do is hit Shift X. And now we have this outlined line. And over here in the properties panel, I can make this a little thicker so it's just a little easier to see what I'm doing. Okay, so like I said, we're making a wave. Just with the direct select tool, make some selections here. Now the wave needs to kind of cross over. So we can add to our existing points by going over here and clicking and adding some more points. Okay, so this doesn't look like a crest of a wave, and that is because everything we've been doing so far has been these smooth transitions from one side of the point to another. But we can break these. So if I go over this handle with the direct select tool and I hold down Alt, I can break this handle. We can also do this when we're drawing shapes. So if I do this and I go like that and I hold down Alt, I can break the tangency there. And so this is how we can create pointy transitions. Okay, so now I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. I want to point at the apex. You know, another good rule of thumb is that if your tangency handles are about the same size, it tends to make appealing curves. That's good to know. Just a rule of thumb though. Don't let it have undue influence. Okay, so over here, I want a perfectly smooth transition from one spot to another. And, I'm going to need a little trough for the next wave here, like this. So I could move this over, but another thing you can do is if there is a change in direction from your resulting shape, you can click on the pen tool and add a point, so rather right where that shape is. So now I have a nice point over here. Once again, I'm going to make this on the 0, and I'm actually going to get rid of this one. And then what will happen then is the transition between these points will be influenced by here. So you have this really smooth curve. So these two shapes, you can imagine if I like this, it's like the start of a flame-like thing, or like a tail, or a beak, or hair, or whatever. And then this form over here is like the basis for letter forms. So if you can do these two things, you can basically deconstruct almost any shape and construct it using precise Bezier curves. Okay,